Hello, and welcome to the TMG Fireside Chat. I'm your host, John Mackey. In this episode, the first episode of 2024, we chat with John Demeter, a returning guest and very insightful person on everything in the fire protection industry. In this episode, we discuss 2023 in review. Since the discussion covers a wide array of topics, we've broken this into two parts. Please be sure to like, follow, subscribe to this channel for part 2, as well as all the other future episodes. Now let's start this episode with John Demeter, President of Wesco HMB.
Hello and welcome to this month's episode of the TMG Fireside Chat. Fortunately today, or I am fortunate today, to be able to sit down again with John Demeter with Wesco. I think you know the history between John and I if you've followed the podcast for a while, but we did a podcast last spring talking about a number of things across the industry. And this month we felt it was appropriate to do a 2023 year in review and kind of talk about what's going on around the industry and share some perspectives of where we think the industry is heading for 2024. So hello, John. Welcome.
Hello, John. Thank you for having me. Am I the only one that's been on twice, or has somebody else been on twice?
Yes, you are twice. Wills Moore, who's was the first one I did back in January of last year.
Right.
He's on the schedule for February because he is speaking at all 3 NAFEDs next year. All right, this year.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I want to give Will an opportunity to set the tone for what his presentation is going to be at NAFED. But yes, you are the first one to make it around the second time. So I'm going to say thank you. For always making yourself available, and always look forward to catching up with you.
You and I have always enjoyed these kind of chats, whether it's being recorded or not.
Aside from the audio issues we had last time. So
and with these, and the big difference is that with these, there's no alcohol involved, and so we it's a little bit different, right?
You're correct. It is January, so I'm doing a dry January. So I'm just drinking a ton of water and cold soda.
I'm doing a dry January as well.
Yep. And this is the second one. I did one with my son over the summer, coming off of NFPA, and we did 2 episodes back on the porch, but we didn't necessarily have a fire going because it's hard to put 2 on the camera. But now it's truly a fireside chat.
Truly a fireside chat. Exactly. Right.
It's 58 degrees here in January in lower Alabama, and I figured why not put the fire on? So
there you go.
I might start sweating here in about 20 minutes.
It's chilly here. It's going to get colder this week. We've been lucky. We've had a very wet winter so far. Everyone's complaining about the amount of water in the yard, but yeah, it's winter time.
It is winter. You're going to have ups and downs like that.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into it. Unlike all the other podcasts we've done, we always have to introduce the interviewer. And so because this is round 2, John, we don't have to go through all those crazy questions that we've done in the past.
Yeah. Well, I want to make a point that I couldn't make last time, is that on January 1st of 2024, Wesco turned 30 years old.
Oh, congratulations!
We are in our 30th year of clean agent recycling and suppression system recharging and servicing, and we're happy about that. And coincidentally, it's the Halon Hurdle's 20th year. We've been producing the newsletter for 20 years now. Yeah. All right. So that's new. We're all kind of excited about that.
How time flies when you're having fun, right?
My wife keeps like going, this year, finally, huh? I really, honestly, I don't want to, this is not about personalities here, but I never expected to be 72 and having so much fun at what I do. Thank God. Thanks somebody up there. I never expected to be 72 and enjoying it as much as I have. And we got new stuff going on.
Absolutely. One, I think it's first a testament to you and your passion for what you do, right? I mean, you've been in this industry for a long time, right? Back to your dad's business and everything else, right?
Yeah.
And so you've seen it go through a number of ebbs and flows. You and I have talked offline about a number of things you've got going on in your business, things I've got going on in my business. And I think, we're I wouldn't call it a crossroads. We are going through a transition phase right now as the industry. And I think in, 3 to 5 years, the industry is going to feel different. It's going to look different. And a number of fronts from a very, very strong, positive way. And other things, it's going to look and feel a little different, and people aren't necessarily going to like or feel comfortable with. But we are going through a transition.
I think you're right. And well, you've got better notes than I do. What do you think? What's the first thing you want to talk about in kind of getting into this transition?
So we'll get to some of the detail there in a minute, but let's kind of start high and then kind of work our way down. So, if you look back at 2023, what did you see as the industry's strengths? What did the industry do really well last year?
Well, the equipment manufacturers, I think what we did really well, and I don't know if this is really talked about much, but I think that we continue to successfully dodge the battles in the HFC front and the battles in the fluoroketone front. We've got the regulators coming after all of the agents that are pretty much left in this marketplace for clean agent suppression, HFCs and fluoroketone. And I feel relatively confident that we'll survive that whole thing pretty well. But you never know. I think the AIM Act, it's in place. There's a law, there's regulations. They're even going to get tougher, and it will squeeze the industry a bit, but we'll make it through that. And then there's fluoroketones. There's this is a year anniversary now of 3M pulling the plug on Novec 1230, right? And then the scramble. What do we do? What happens now? And then we find out that the Europeans are coming after all PFAS, including fluoroketones, including HFCs, and I think that we organized well to fight that. I think HARC and FSSA came across and did the right thing and are in the right spot fighting the right battle. And I think that we'll be successful. I think that fluoroketones certainly in the fire space will be part of our business, 5-10 years from now. I don't think it's guaranteed, but I think that we end up prevailing there. I worry a little bit about, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I worry a little bit about the association of fluoroketone with PFAS. 5 years from now, the lawyers on TV advertising, if you had this PFAS product in your house, you can be due a cash settlement. Call this number below. And PFAS, it's necessarily like the new tobacco, but it's pretty close. The bad stuff. If Paul Rivers or Paul would say, but let me tell you about our PFAS, and I get that too. I totally get that, but still, I think it's going to be a battle. But we fought through it.
To your point about the strikes, I do think that the rallying call that we made around PFAS because of 3M's announcement really called everyone to the table. When I say everybody, the associations, the manufacturers in those associations, the contractors that play in this space, not only here in the United States, but over in Europe as well, Asia or Australia. I remember I facilitated that PFAS presentation with Paul for the FSSA back in April, I think. And, we had 700 people on the call. And, I remember getting emails going into the call and coming out of the call from Australia, from, Singapore, can you please help us? And just trying to understand it. What I thought was most interesting from the FSSA's, the PFAS task force and what they were able to do was they really rallied around, okay, let's get in front of this train, which is over in Europe, right? So we partnered with Euroalarm to get in front of the lobbying effort to get in front of the EU and really understand what the issue is. And, I think, don't quote me on the number, I think it was almost 2,000 responses as to why fluoroketones had to come out of the PFAS argument, and it kind of slowed the process down in the EU. And so I think when you roll that to the United States, we're starting to hear that as well, as these states that are passing these complete total PFAS bans, Minnesota, Maine, some other states, you've got government agencies and even some consumer groups saying, well, wait a minute. You know that the coating that's inside a paper straw is made with the PFAS coating. So now we're going to get rid of paper straws. You know that, it's in military applications. It's in,
It's all
semiconductor manufacturing. It's in all these other products. And I think at the end of the day, there needs to be an effort to educate. And like you said, really separate the good from the bad. Yes, legacy AFFF is bad. We see it. The science shows it. The water results show it. You're contaminated soil or contaminated water, and that stuff dates back to the 60s, right? And 3M even put out a settlement trying to draw a line in the sand, saying, okay, here's here's what we've contributed to AFFF, and we're trying to put this behind us. The flip side, the science has said that fluoroketones obviously do not contribute to any issues in the soil, and from an atmospheric perspective, it's nearly benign because it evaporates so quickly. It's not, global factor, warming factor of 1, less than 1, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we've got 25 years of history around this. So
the other thing too, and again, I don't know the science behind this thing like you guys do, but it's also not bioaccumulative, right? And
correct.
That to me, that's the big one. Well, not getting into the soil and the water table, that's of course big, but do we have good current science on the non-bioaccumulative aspect of fluoroketones? Is that
so the non-PBT aspect of it? All that science goes back 20 years ago when the product first came out. The thing that was interesting, though, you've got third-party labs. It wasn't 3M. It was scientists from Japan. It was scientists from Europe that were doing the testing on it. I think the one thing that we have to figure out is, let's call it long-term atmospheric exposure, right? FSSA just put together an infographic around TFA. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know what it means, but ultimately it ties back to acid rain, right? Triofluoric acid or triofluoric acid.
Yeah.
So in that context, even in the infographic, it says that TFA traceability in fluoroketone is so minuscule, you can't separate it from any other thing that's contributing to acid rain from coal-fired power plants or any other types of emissions. So therefore, you can't come back and pin TFA back to fluoroketone and separate it from everything else. More to come. I think like I said, there's an education opportunity and training. I put a podcast out, a blog out back in the fall saying we've got to do a better job of educating the media about the differences, educating our legislators so they don't continue to just broad brush that everything's bad, and really understand what the issues are. Yeah.
If you want to get back to what went right, what did we do right in 2023? I think just one more moment on the associations. I think the FSSA was geared right there. Park was right there, and I think the association, FSSA. Let's talk about that specifically for a while. They're going through a bit of a transition. When you look around the board these days, a lot of young faces there. The organization is set from a standpoint of leadership. They're set for a long time to come. Good young leadership now with Brennan and Brett Stratton coming up next year. It's a very, very impressive group. Lee Kaiser, on the technical committee, doing a really good job. Yeah. It's really a good group.
So I think what's interesting when you look at the makeup of the board for FSSA, and you also look at the makeup of the board for NAFED.
Yeah.
Right. Full disclosure is, you're on the board for NAFED. I'm an advisory role for the board. You replace my seat, my role.
Yeah. Right.
Pass the torch. But you look at the group with, Aaron Dickens is the chairman.
Yeah.
He's in his mid-30s. You look at the makeup of the people that were in that room. Half that board is people under the age of 35.
Yep.
Kendall and Kyle and Jesse Getson just rolled off. You've got some really strong up and comers in the industry on these boards, which says a lot. And I think I've reiterated that point a number of times on these podcasts, on blogs, that, that next generation, those up and comers, we've got to get them involved, because that's the future. And now they have an opportunity to have a voice, and, through those associations.
Yeah.
It's good to
And,
see. To your
I
point. Yeah, I was going to say, Aaron and Brett, or excuse me, Brent and Brenton and the board pulled together that PFAS task force at last year's conference. I mean, that task force came together in about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And the things that we were able to get in front of over the last, 10 months really stabilized the foundation of how we're going to continue to manage these PFAS issues in the industry.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's good. And also sticking with 23, I don't talk to in detail many of the manufacturers, the equipment manufacturers, but those that I have talked to, they had good years, from what they're telling me anyway. And I have no reason to doubt them. They wouldn't lie. The people that I'm speaking to, they have good years. And from what I hear so far, 2024 is equally as strong. Now, I looked at some of your growth projections on your notes. I wondered where you got them from, but they have a feel right aspect to them. It's, the number kind of feels right. I look at the companies that we're involved in here, the ones that we deal business, they kind of say the same thing. I don't know where you got the 8 million fire extinguishers from, though. Where'd you get that number from?
So that's the project that, this goes back I should say number of years, probably 4 or 5 years ago, when I first started the business. Dave Pelton and I did a research project for someone to really understand how many new manufactured fire extinguishers are made every year. And based on the data that we could get, now you call manufacturing and say how many you make, they're not going to tell you.
Right.
But we're able to deduct across the major manufacturers here in the United States, we're not talking globally, just in the United States, about 8 to 8.5 million. Do you think that's different?
Well, decades ago, when I was in the portable extinguisher business, I'm talking mid to late 80s. The number, and again, this industry is not really great for sharing information, whether it's on the equipment that nobody wants to say anything about what they do. But we had put the market between 3 and 4 million back in the mid to late 80s.
So also recognize the 8 to 8.5 million number I'm putting out there is reflective of the commercial industrial applications, not residential.
Oh. I was so it would be more with residential.
Yeah.
I was looking at the entire market. I don't know. We were producing about 1 million extinguishers a year in the mid 80s at RC.
Yeah. So if I go back to my days at Ansel, so 2008, 2009, Ansel's high water mark was just shy of 2 million. Now they've fallen way off of that. I think they might be back there today, but they, when I left in 11 or 12, they were dropping the number down because of, efficiencies. And they were comfortable about 1 million, 1.5 million. At the same time, as Ansel dropped their number, Amerex took off.
Yeah.
Amerex completely modernized their facility. And so today, you look at the volume that Amerex puts out, my estimate says somewhere between 3.5 and 4 million units a year.
Yeah, and Buckeye's got to have a decent share too, right?
Yeah, I think they're probably there with Badger. I think they're equal.
Right.
The same thing. You're not getting hard numbers from them.
Right. I mean, I toured both the Buckeye factory and the Amerex factory. They're sizable facilities.
Enormous. Yeah.
Yeah.
When was the last time you went to the Amerex facility?
Oh, we had a HARC meeting there maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, I think if you went back, I went through there 5 years ago, and it was the remodel was completely finished.
Yeah.
I mean, John, it's
they're a machine. They're a machine.
Space age with what we heard of how they manage that facility. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I heard. I always forget his name. He worked for them for a while. He was their operations guy. You know him, I think. We've talked about him. He gave a presentation at a NAFED executive conference a couple of years ago. Anyway, and he talked about the production line, which had the aluminum rods that fed the machine to produce the valves, and how they were automatically fed from the skid to the machine. And when that weight dropped down below a certain amount, meaning so many bars had moved off of the skid, it sent a signal up to somewhere, who sent a text message to the manager, said, you need to order more.
It's even gone further. So they put an internet mesh system in their lighting system.
Yeah, so, that's what he was talking. That was yeah, that's what he was talking about. Right.
And it was I can't remember his first name. Modic,
yeah, good guy, smart guy, knew his stuff.
So he was great. Yeah, I mean, I think he also built a production facility at Badger too before he did that at Emirates.
Right.
But
Vic, right? Victor.
Vic Modic, yeah. And so fully automated the whole facility. It was all, just-in-time inventory, and to your point, the CNC operator did not have to do anything. So the computers tracked everything automatically. Even as going, that order went into the queue for the supplier to say, all right, we're ready.
Pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So it's great. I mean, they can tell you where everything is through the process on every inch of that floor.
And it's impressive. So, and I think where does Ansell manufacture their portables? Are they in Marionette still?
In Marionette, still in Marionette. Yep.
You got Marionette. You got Ansell here. You got Amerex here. You got Buckeye here. You've got Kitty in Mexico and Badger in Mexico.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah.
So very interesting. But so that's 8 to 8.5 million. It might be a little bit different now. I think maybe it's growing. I don't know what the industry as a whole on the fire extinguisher side. What did my data say? About 6.5% growth overall in fire extinguishers. Kind of right behind fire alarm, which is growing at about 7%.
That's the number. That number 5 to 7. It kind of runs through all of your different categories there, right? That's kind of where you come out with growth.
Yep.
That 5 to 7% range. Yeah.
The outlier right now is sprinklers. Sprinklers on a crazy run right now. Sprinklers running, depending on whose data you pull, 10-12% growth just here in the U.S. I mean, it's insane.
That's because Amazon's putting in 1 million square feet of warehousing in every other town.
Well, that's one. Two, I think, some big battery projects. You've got the Blue Oval project in Kentucky, Blue Oval project in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Those are some of the biggest sprinkler jobs, ever.
The
semiconductor plant in North Phoenix, same thing. I mean, that job I think required 500 to 700 pipe fitters to hang the sprinkler pipe. I mean, it was significant demand on labor. But to your point, all the warehouses. I've heard a rumor that the warehouse capacity is now set. We don't need any more warehouses. So now
did you hear that? I mean, because if from where I'm sitting, I bet there's probably, I'm going to say 5 million square feet, maybe 7 million square feet of Amazon warehouse within a 5-mile radius of where I'm sitting. We sit at the juncture of the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway and Interstate 287. So it's a transportation hub, and Newark Airport, and the 2 New York airports are not far from here. So with that comes warehouse space. But you heard that they're done with warehouse. But that would be good, by the way. We've got a lot of warehouses around here.
I think when they say they're done, I think it's moving, right? So for example, I'm 3 miles from Mobile Bay. And the Mobile port is the fastest growing port percentage-wise in the United States. And the reason being is that New Orleans ports can't bring any more cargo because the river, Mississippi River, is dropping in depth. And therefore, the bigger ships can't get in. So they can get into Mobile. So Mobile is on track to double its capacity from just 2 years ago. And they think they're going to have to double it again here in the next 5 years, just to continue to keep up. And so what that means is that all that infrastructure that's in New Orleans, that's over in Houston, right, is now going to work its way into lower Alabama. They're even trying to figure out, okay, let's get into the port and then just train it up into these supply chain hubs because we don't have the infrastructure down here to support it. Interesting, but I think it's just the shift. You're going to start to see it shift. There's the population shifting, supply chains are moving around. I think that's what's going to fuel our our industry continuing forward because,
Yeah.
office retail space is changing, right? You don't have these huge corporate complexes and sky rises anymore, high rises anymore. So you got to repurpose those buildings. I was just talking to another contractor this morning where they're repurposing a mall in a major city from retail to mixed retail and condos.
Yeah, I think there's enough from what I've read. The Wall Street Journal just had a big piece on it a couple of weeks ago. From what I've read, there's work there for contractors for the next 20 years in repurposing Manhattan, repurposing Brooklyn, and all the space that went up there. It was a pretty depressing. If you own office real estate, it was a pretty depressing article. Now, you don't want to
agree.
You don't want to be invested there, especially if you're a short-term investor. It's not going to be pretty.
Agree. I've got roots back to Chicago. I've talked to, a couple of my friends that are CFOs for major corporations, my, family members that live and or work downtown. And they're saying, and you read it in the newspaper as well, but the city of Chicago is at less than 50% capacity for those high rises.
I talked to somebody who we both know who lives in Chicago and said pretty much the same thing. He said, they'll tell you publicly that it's 60 to 70% occupied, but it's really not. It's more like, 30 to 40% occupied.
Right.
And you can tell by the number.
San Francisco would be another example. That city is, high rise, everyone's trying to get out of San Francisco first and California second. So San Francisco is really feeling that.
I heard it, the stories that I hear about San Francisco is that it's an absolute mess. And then I caught something on my social media feed, and it was a real positive thing about San Francisco. And I was reading all the comments, and I'm going, wow, is this right? Because I'm hearing something completely different than what this article is telling me here. Completely different. I talked to somebody who lives near San Francisco. Oh, it's a great, great city. It's a great, great city. And I forget who it was. I was in a meeting with somebody, at lunch the other day with a banker. And one of the people at that meeting spent a year working in San Francisco recently. And she said, it's worse than you think. It's really worse than you think. It's terrible. You can't go anywhere near San Francisco. So I kind of take her, opinion, because she was there. She lived there for over a year doing business. She can't live there. So
yeah, and I think that's what we're going to see across the country is that pick a major city, and you've got those traditional corporate centers moving out. People don't want to live in the hubs anymore in downtown. They want to go back to the suburbs. So now you start to see people, and then also moving from north to south, and so it's part of that shift, that transition we're going through as a country.
Or work from home.
Exactly. We've got enough flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. Are you seeing a refill market on HFCs now, a little bit earlier before EPA's code goes into or change goes into effect?
No, I think it's you can't predict when something's going to discharge, and you can't predict when there's going to be a fire. So that's completely random. We don't know that. I think our uptick, at Wesco, is due partly to the AIM Act. I think a lot of companies realized, years ago, we'd rather farm this work out. We can do it, but Wesco or AES are better at it, and they end up farming business out. So I think that we've always been the beneficiary of that idea. If I'm going to do this work, FED, I need the gas. I need it to be tested. I need a scale. I need a guy. I need the tools. I need the adapters, and I need to do it right away because I had a discharge. And not everybody is prepared to do that. Now, when you overlay the EPA AIM regulations on it, especially the ones that are to come, we haven't even seen all the regulations yet, all the controls that they're going to put on that. We'll see them in 2024. But anyway, I think that's probably driving some of the business our way, I think.
Yeah.
And and the other thing too, and we try to make this point to some of the power gen companies. On the Halon side, if you had a discharge, or if you didn't have a discharge, it's sitting there looking good, and it's you're feeling good about that system there. If it's the newest system around, it was made in 1994.
Yeah.
If it's a brand new system put in right from the factory, it's 30 years old.
Yeah.
And the company that made that is probably not around anymore. And if they are, they're not supporting it anymore. So there's an incentive to do, and we see these, we see opportunities like that all the time. A discharge. What do we do? Do we recharge it, or do we put something else in? It goes on all the time. But yeah, as the world turns, I don't. But yeah, but I think that the AIM Act has some, and and the AIM Act, and not to jump around too much or get too far ahead of ourselves here. What the EPA is proposing in the AIM Act. They're proposing that everything, all new equipment be filled with recycled HFCs.
Yeah, by the end of 2025, no virgin gas.
Yeah, no virgin gas. Everything's recycled. So I don't know. When I was part of the HARC response, and I was part of the FSSA response, and selfishly I should have said absolutely we should do that. But it made no sense at all. When you're looking at it logically, it really makes no sense at all. You want to do something like that, phase it in over 5 years or 10 years. You can't do it on day one. But
no reason to change it. No reason to accelerate it. To your point.
Yeah, and if you followed some of the FSSA and the HARC discussions, lawyers were saying it's illegal. Were you part of that discussion? So it didn't end up. It did not end up in the final response to the EPA, but counsel for HARC and counsel for FSSA were saying you can't do that. You can't. You've got a regulation that says you're going to wind this thing down over the next 15 years, and you've said that. Now you're saying, except you guys there, you're being wound down right now. You can't use that virgin stuff anymore. You got to use recycled stuff. I think when it was talked through, I agree that we shouldn't get into that kind of a fight with the EPA right now. You're not going to fight the EPA on, we'll sue you. It's not going to happen. And so it didn't make it in there. But they're thinking about it, and something's going to happen. They're going to put something in those new regulations that requires a certain amount of recycled gas to be put in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 2 points. One, I was on the EPA public input call, just listening, and you had 2 people on the fire space talk. One was Tom Cortina, and the other was Mike from Wesco.
Yeah.
And everybody else, of the other 20 speakers, all from the HVAC space.
Yeah, right.
Because they're trying to protect that, the bigger part of the sandbox, right? Unfortunately for us, fire is such a small percentage of that market.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting to hear their argument, and they're arguing the same thing. To say, listen, this is, you try to go to a recycle market, we don't have the infrastructure to manage recycled gas and bring it back in somewhere else.
I wonder, we touched the refrigerant market a little bit here, and we know people that are in it, and even the literature, even the refrigeration market literature, for the past couple of years, they've been complaining about, we can't get the stuff out of there. We can't get that stuff to recycle. Something's happening to it, and we just don't know what. This much is out there, this much comes back, and we don't know what happens to the rest of it. So I wonder if somebody didn't pressure the EPA to put something in there that forces that stuff out. Maybe they thought by doing that, by requiring recycled gas in, it would push the market in a direction that even the the recyclers, obviously recyclers have an interest in doing this, but I don't know that the equipment manufacturer, I think they're the ones that are upset about it. But I'm just curious as to where that whole push came from.
You may never know, John. I have ideas.
Yeah. Well, as we go through 24, it'll become a little bit clearer. But that's why we have the FSSA. That's why we have HARC and HRC to follow that stuff.
Exactly, to follow it. I'm putting a little log in the fire, John, then we'll get going.
Okay. I thought we were going.
Yeah. We are going, but now I can edit that last piece.
You've got somebody that does that work, right? You've got somebody that can cut and splice and take out any profanities that may drop.
John, living down here, there's a company called, and I'll give them a little plug and hopefully put it in the podcast. It's a company called Mobile Bay Firewood over in Mobile. So I'm 40 minutes from downtown Mobile. Nice little startup. Husband and wife. The husband is a Mobile firefighter, and on his days off, him and his wife started this firewood company. So they sell kiln-dried chopped firewood.
Oh yeah.
By the pallet. I place an order. They deliver it to my driveway and roll it with a dolly, push cart, to my spot in my garage where I want it.
All right.
And I go through probably two pallets a year with the fireplace. And when I'm ready for number 2, I simply just say, I'm ready for another one. And 2 days later, here they come. Take all the old stuff out, put the new stuff in. And
it's sold by the cord? Is it measured by the cord? Do you buy a cord or a half a cord or?
I think it's probably by the cord, but they sell it by the pallet. So
yeah, it's probably a standard size pallet, right?
It's actually a small one. So basically, to your point, it's like you said, it's probably a cord. There's probably 2 cords total in that pallet because by the time he puts it into my garage,
a cord is really big. I don't think you're buying a cord. I think a cord is 4 feet high, 8 feet long, and again, it's been a long time since I bought a cord of wood, but I have.
So I am 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So I don't know, but it's a great service. Absolutely love it. I preach about his. I've got to meet the guy a couple of times. He's drop it off.
Yeah.
And he's just like, we got young kids. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to do after I retire from being a firefighter. And just me too.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And support your local business.
Look at that. I mean, that's a nice little fire I got going.
That's a great fire. Yeah, that's a really good fire. That's a really good fire.
Oh,